Welcome to the June 15th regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting. If you can take a moment to silence your cell phone and then join our students from Adams in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right, go ahead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, Brad, can you take roll for us, please?
You bet. President Roush.
Here.
Vice President McFarland. Not here. Secretary Ringgold. Not here. Treasurer Lauterbach. Not here. Trustee Blasey, I am here. Trustee Craig.
Here.
Trustee Horowitz.
Present.
Thank you, Brad. Have a quorum. All right. Item 2.1 for information presentation on the 26-27 general operating budget and tax rates. Anna.
Good evening. We'll wait for that to load up here for just a second. All right. Well, Michigan Public Act 621 of 1978, the Uniform Budgeting Act, requires all local governments to adopt balanced budgets in a format specified by the state before July 1st of each year. It also requires that the local unit shall amend the General Appropriations Act as soon as it becomes apparent that a deviation from the original General Appropriations Act is necessary and the amount of the deviation can be determined. The final revision of the 25-26 budget will also occur this evening. Public school budget is not advisory in nature, but rather an accounting of the source and uses of public funds. If either changes, the budget must be amended. Looking at our annual timeline here, we did have our budget revision for the 25-26 on March 16th. We had our board workshop on April 20th, which was the first time that we started hearing about some of our projections for 26-27. And that brings us to tonight, where we will have board action on the approval of the final 25-26 budget amendment, as well as the adoption of the 26-27 budget. So looking at some disclaimers, the state of Michigan has not finalized the fiscal year 27 school aid budget yet. So the revenues presented in here represent our current estimates. This has been the case the last several years. However, the Governor, House, and Senate budgets were in at the time that we locked in our predictions, which is nice, unlike last year for this. So our estimates this evening are representing our best guess based on the numbers expressed in each of those budgets. The amount of variance captured in the audit will impact the fund balance numbers that we see in here. Again, our predictions were locked in on June 9th to be able to prepare our documents for the board packet. A reminder that a 1% variance within this budget is approximately $1.22 million, and this budget does not include fund modifications. Looking at our millage rates, we are showing a 17.9766 mills on non-homestead property. You will be used to seeing 18 mills for that. Why is this lower? It is due to a Headley rollback this year, meaning that property values grew faster than the rate of inflation. So this will unfortunately not allow us to collect our full foundation allowance, seeing at that 17.9766. The hold harmless millage, which raises $122 total per pupil. So pupil count and taxable value play a big part in determining this rate. There is a state calculation that happens with some district input. It's adjusted each year to reflect over or under collections from previous years. And we are setting that tonight at 0.3726 mils on the homestead and qualified agricultural property. And then on our school building and site bonds, we are at 2.5 total on all properties. As a reminder, our city taxes are split 50-50 between winter and summer. So those rates would be looking at 0.1863 and 0.1863 for the homestead, which is total of 0.290 less than last year, and that bond would be at 1.25 on both the summer and winter for city. We'll ask you this evening to approve levying half of these rates on the summer tax roll in the city of Midland on a tax resolution in a little bit. Looking at that hold harmless millage rate that we just discussed, you can kind of see our trend here that it has continued downward. Some of that has to do with some state legislation changing. Our max collection that we were able to do at the origin of this was $415.31 per student. You can see kind of with the stars within there where we've had some little legislation changes that has changed the amount that we've been able to collect per pupil. Right now, our current max collection is at $122 per pupil. This brings in approximately $900,000 of local revenue. And as I have said on the previous slide, our rate decreased 0.029 compared to last year. Looking at some of our major revenue assumptions, we chose $250 per pupil foundation increase, bringing it up to $10,268. That hold harmless, keeping at the net $122 per pupil. We chose the $250 as it was consistent across all three budgets, and the revenue conference that has had, kind of looking at where state funds are coming in for next year and their predictions, point to an opportunity for this amount to be stable and for it to come to fruition if that ends up being in the final budget. For enrollment, we are looking at a decline of 41 FTE from our 25-26 blended count, bringing it to 7,232. This enrollment estimate is based on our average FTE decline over the last several years. Looking again at our per pupil foundation revenue sources, the state restructure of hold harmless has shifted more of the funding obligations to the state school aid fund versus the local taxpayer. Was reflected in lower hold harmless rates discussed on the previous slides, but you can see through here that right now our percent of funding that we receive for our foundation allowance is looking at about 30.8% from local funding, 69.2% of coming that from the state. We have seen a slight increase in recent years of the percent of that from local funding, which is a reflection of our increased property values within the city of Midland.
Hey, Anna, if you go back one slide, the 25-26 from 10,018 to 10,268 represents the $250 per student increase.
Correct.
What are we supposed to be thinking about? The 250 is broken up between the local home harmless and the state aid. So the state aid, even though the legislator says it's a top line of 250, it's not really 250. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because
the hold harmless is factored within there. So it would be a 250 increase on what we currently have, but that hold harmless is factored in within there.
Okay, so 30% of the 250 flows through the hold harmless.
30.8% of that 10,268 is combined between your local millage with your non-homestead and your hold harmless.
Okay.
So not 30.8 of the 122, but of that 10,268 total.
Got it.
Looking at our enrollment trend, our blended count throughout the years from 99-2000 school years to our estimated 26-27, showing our projections here, and we did discuss enrollment in detail during the budget workshop. We've already analyzed these losses and have identified that we are primarily losing students to virtual learning, which feeds into our plans to open the Midland Flex Learning Center in the 26-27 school year, which is a direct response to this trend that we are seeing as an attempt to aid the district in retaining students we would have otherwise lost. Some major revenue assumptions that were built into this budget in categoricals. We did see the loss of 27L4 MIPSR's healthcare offset at around $693,000. This was funding that we got this year that came in without associated expenditures needed that was able to help us within our general fund. We are seeing the expiration of our carryover of the 31AA mental health and safety funds of around $839,000. We are showing within this budget a loss of the 29-7 enrollment stabilization funds of around $391,000. And then also our Title I, Title II, Title IV, we have set at 85% of the previous year, which is a reduction of around $799,000. That 85% is we don't know our federal funding levels yet, and this allows us to budget conservatively. So we have approximately $106.5 million worth of revenue in the 26-27 budget, which is approximately $7.3 million less than what we will show in the June 26 budget adjustment. Also looking at our state revenue, do want to point out within there that we have seen a categorical surge over the last few years. In fiscal year 2019, of our state funding, 64% was foundation allowance, while 36% was non-foundation allowance. For this most recent year, we saw it at a 50-50 split. What this means is more state funding is now showing up as a categorical or non-foundation allowance, which restricts what we are able to spend this funding on and does not give the district as great a flexibility to address our priorities. Looking at that general fund revenue as a comparison to the 25-26 June amendment that you will see in a little bit, our makeup of revenue remains consistent, showing from 68.4% of state funding in 25-26 to 67.8% in 26-27. That federal amount, hovering right around that 2%. Local property taxes showing a slight increase in 26-27 from that 18.8 to 22.5. And our other revenue at 10.2 in 25-26 and 7.9 in 26-27. But overall coming in at about $106 million. Looking at our major expenditure assumptions, we continued the use of our build our budget process for building and department expenditures, which reflects an increase of approximately 0.8% over the 25-26 school year. As a future graph will show within here, the build our budget process is used for establishing kind of the non-personnel side of our expenditures, which makes up about 16% of our total expenditures. The biggest increase that we saw within these areas is actually our maintenance budget. The most impactful changes in expenditures are the 84.2% of our expenditures, which are related to personnel costs. We did see salary increases for all employees. We have budgeted in step increases and lane movements. And then we did budget in a 12% increase in our medical cost. Looking at our general fund expenditures by function, we're showing around $121 million of expenditures within this budget. Of this, 76% is going towards instruction and student supports, which has remained pretty consistent, that we've had a little over 3/4 of our budget going directly to classroom and student supports as well as instructional supports. Looking at expenditure changes from our 25-26 estimate of June 26 to our original fiscal year 27 budget, you can see within there we have approximately 1.6 increase overall in expenditures. Salaries, we see a slight increase within there as well as benefits. You will notice that we've, as promised in our budget workshop, went back to our estimated numbers, really sharpened our pencils, and are able to show a decrease in purchase services, contracted services, supplies, capital outlay, and our other areas. We do see a slight increase in outgoing transfers, which is primarily due to our ESA cost. And within here, as mentioned before, 84.2% of these expenditures are directly related to salaries and benefits. Looking at the general fund snapshot, comparing our latest 25-26 budget amendment as to the proposed 26-27 budget, going in there showing, as we talked about, our decrease in budgeted revenues, a slight increase in budgeted expenditures. Going through shows our appropriation of about $15 million for 26-27. We built in a 2% expected budget variance, which brings our anticipated shortfall to a little less than $13 million. This brings our anticipated fund balance on June 30th to around $19 million, which is a 15.7% fund balance. These numbers will change based on our final amendment and our budget variance that we are able to capture in the audit. And these numbers are speculative. They will change, and we will continue to modify them as we have more information. Looking at our fund balance history throughout the years, I have a chart showing this from the 1998 through our estimated 26 and 27. Again, fiscal year 26 and 27, our estimates will change based on our final amendment and budget variance captured in the audit. The healthy fund balance is important to keep for several key reasons, as we've talked about before. It prevents the need to borrow for cash flow purposes during the summer months. It affords for opportunities to address needs and priorities for our district, and it assists in maintaining programming during years with fiscal challenges. All of this is proving to come to fruition as we've been able to utilize our healthy fund balance to address student needs and priorities in the 26-27 school year. Seeing within here the last 2 points, as mentioned before, our full fund balance, we are showing at a 26.7% for fiscal year 26 and 15.7% for fiscal year 27. Looking at hypothetical foundation allowance, just want to show within here, as we kind of talked about our state revenue, we've been tracking this since '94, since Proposal A passed. But if foundation allowance had kept up with CPI, MPS would receive approximately $4,562 more per student, which based on our enrollment estimates would have been close to $33 million more in revenue in the 26-27 school year. This is based on a CPI prediction of 3.8%, which we showed the year over year as of May when we locked in these numbers. So if we had kept up with that CPI inflation rate, the foundation allowance instead of the $10,268 as we had predicted for this coming year would have reflected at $14,830 per pupil. So looking at some key takeaways for 26-27, our expenditures have increased by an estimated 1.6%, which is roughly $1.9 million in comparison to our June 25-26 amendment. But keep in mind, inflation increased from May 25 to May 26 at 4.2%. State revenues decreased an estimated 7.7% in our budget, which is approximately $6 million. And then overall revenues decreased an estimated 6.4% from 25-26 to 26-27. We are continuing to prioritize our student needs when we are evaluating our spending decisions. And we also continue to analyze staffing for efficiency and reductions through attrition. Some actions have already taken place regarding reductions through attrition, and we are closely monitoring potential for additional efficiencies as vacancies occur. And finally, we are predicting a reanalysis of our programs and course offerings for 27-28 to remain as financially prudent as we are able. Are there any questions?
I have a couple comments, couple questions. First, I just want to say thanks to the team because I know, going through discretionary budget cuts is not easy, and you guys have obviously tightened the belt as much as you can to this point, so thank you. And I know you made a comment about attrition as well. It's not easy when we ask staff to take on more work, but that's what we've already started doing, so thank you for that as well. I think obviously it's not where we want to be, but this is also why we had built up a fund balance so that we could ride through years like this. And I guess maybe to fellow board members and the public too, like this is an opportunity for all of us to get engaged with our legislators, which I've done already. Actually talked to one of them on Friday about when the budget was, when we were actually going to get a school budget so that we can start locking these in. But then I was immediately concerned the day after when it looks like the speaker is trying to use it as a leverage point in other negotiations that he wants. And I think it's also an opportunity for all of us to seek how we can do things different and keep working to minimize as much as possible. I want to focus in just on a couple of things real quick and clarify both for myself and for the public. When we talk about categoricals, Anna, you had listed out 4 different loss of revenue and categoricals. Those are that's revenue for specific actions above and beyond the general fund allowance, correct? Or the foundation
per
allowance?
pupil foundation allowance, yes, those are above and beyond.
Okay, so that, in particular, one of the things that concerns me the most is the loss of like Title I funding for our most vulnerable students. These add up to like $2.75 million. So is this like we absolutely know that these aren't coming through, or this is unknown at this point?
No, this is unknown at this point. So your federal budget, much like our state, is on an October 1st through September 30th cycle. So we don't know our full allocations yet for the 26-27 school year. Again, to be conservative within there, we budget at 85% of our current allocation. Historically, we haven't really seen less than that. So we feel comfortable being able to safely state that number. But beyond that is just an unknown, and we would hate to be including funds within there with the level of uncertainty that we would have to include greater than that percentage.
Got it. And I mean, in particular for our community, the second and fourth one, mental health supports, and then Title I, Title II, and Title IV funding in particular, those address student needs first and foremost. So to our public that has the ear of legislators and wants to engage in the process, please do so. One other clarification question, the 12% healthcare increase that you've predicted in the budget, is that 12%, remind me how the cap works, and is 12% equal to our cap?
No, so the 12% would reflect our projected increase in premium cost.
Okay.
Sorry. So within there, we do have a hard cap that is legislatively set. That is the maximum amount we can pay for a full family plan, a 2-person plan, or a single-person plan. What we don't know at this point is what the difference will be between our premiums, which are unknown for calendar year 27 at this point, versus the hard cap number, which is already set for calendar year 27. To try to kind of hedge within there, we do budget for an increase. We came in at 12%. Last year, to put it in perspective, we saw an 18% increase in our healthcare premiums, which was much higher than we had previously seen. We do not anticipate seeing that again,
Okay.
But felt that 12% was a fair estimate to help weather whatever those premiums might come in at.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Anna. Item 3 on our agenda are any requests to address the board specifically on the 26-27 general operating budget and tax rates. All right. Move on to the consent agenda. Item 4.1, approval of the minutes from May 18th regular meeting and May 18th closed session. Item 4.2 are recommendations for hire as listed in your agenda packet. Item 4.3 are teachers attaining tenure status as listed in your agenda packet. Item 4.4 are resignations on the effective dates as listed in your agenda packet. Item 4.5 are the financials. Approval of the payment of the school system's bills for the month of April 2026 as listed in the check register prepared by Lori Holderby in the amount of $10,462,585 is recommended. Distribution of obligations by fund is included in the documentation. Item 4.6 are legal payments to the firms associated listed in the agenda packet. Is there a motion to approve item 4.1 through 4.6?
So moved. Support.
Motion by Horowitz, support by Craig. Any further discussion or questions on the consent agenda? Right. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, item 4.1 through 4.6, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 5.1, Spotlight on Excellence with Adams Elementary. Principal Renfro, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Renfro. I'm the principal at Adams, and I am here today with our amazing world language teacher, Mrs. McMahon, and 3 wonderful students. And we're going to talk more with you about the Vintage Suitcase Interactive Museum project that we brought to you last year. If you remember last year, Mrs. McMahon brought the suitcases, passed them around. She had written a grant to purchase the supplies in the suitcases. Each suitcase has the contents of a country. Different objects are in there for the students to explore. She was putting the suitcases together but hadn't implemented the project yet, but she did this year, and we brought some students along with us this evening, Brett Robb, Ainsley Summers, and Olivia Murray, and they're going to talk to you about the interactions they've had with the suitcases and how the project has gone. But first, I'll turn it over to Mrs. McMahon, and she can tell you about the implementation of the project.
Yeah, hi, my name is Kim McMahon. So I teach at Adams. If you remember last year, or if you haven't met me, our program is different from the other elementaries, and I teach Spanish, French, German, and Chinese, and the countries where they speak the languages, and it's so fun, and I love it. And this grant was really exciting, and so last year I brought the suitcases, and since then I've even used PTO money, some other money, and now I have built 16 of them. So I have 4 for each language, and I think it's really important, for example, for French, for the kids to see that the diversity of where these languages are spoken. So there's France, which is what most people think of, but then I have one for Canada, for Quebec, and then we have Haiti, which is, a third world country and totally different from France, and then also a country in Africa, Burkina Faso. So I try to make them pretty diverse, the ones that we have. And I just thought it'd be really cool for you to hear, not from me, but from the kids who got to kind of experience them this year. And so you can see a few of the ways that we've used them. So I'm going to turn it over to Olivia Murray. She's going to talk first.
Thank you, Mrs. McMahon. So I'm going to show 2 suitcases today. I will be showing Germany and Mexico. And we've been learning lots from these suitcases, including interesting facts, clothes that they would wear, and animals, and other items that they would use, like toys. But today I'm here to show you about these 2. So I will So one way she introduced Germany was by choosing a number in German, and then the student whose number it was would come up and pick an item out of the box. So this showed a way that a kid could pick what they were interested in, and then they'd hand it to Mrs. McMahon, and she would explain like what this was about, and like. And then she'd let kids pass it around so that they could just like feel the item. And then a second way was she used this as a provocation was to show the items in the suitcase and have the students figure out what the country was by seeing the items. So she'd pull out like a donkey, a soccer ball, maybe a taco, and then they'd have to guess by all the items that she had pulled out what the country was. And I think this is very interesting so that you can pick out what you want to learn about. And I thought that it was very interesting to learn about items that you were interested in and not what like other people were. So it was like your decision on what to learn about. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ainsley. My favorite way that we use the suitcases was to choose a favorite item after Mrs. McMahon taught us about those artifacts. So that is the suitcase we used last year for the activity, and we learned about Austria. So for example, we learned that there is a creepy Christmas figure in Austria called Krampus. So if you were most interested in that, you would get the bag that talked all about Christmas in Austria. Then you would find a space around the room and research. Some of the things that might have been in the bag would be a book, or maybe even some worksheets. This is a really cool experience because you get to pick something that matters to you, and this means that people will actually be interested in what they're learning, and they'll be motivated to learn better, stay on task, and focused. Thank you.
I'm Brett, and I'm going to talk about what we did most recently, just this past April. What we did was Mrs. McMahon put different suitcases on each table, one from 5 different Chinese-speaking countries. And then we got to choose one and look at them, and each student in a group got to choose one thing to research. We had a paper with questions to research on our Chromebook. What I picked was the hairy crab. And I was trying to figure out what country this was from, but I couldn't figure it out because it can be in more than one country. I asked my table group members, and one of them said Hong Kong because it had the Star Ferry, which is only in Hong Kong. What I also got to do after I answered my questions was look at a video on how to cook a hairy crab, and it looked really good, like a 5-star gourmet dish. This was cool because each group was discovering a different country to share to the class so we could learn about different places that speak Chinese.
So these were some of the ways we used it this year. And so when I met with these kids, we brainstormed a little bit. The one other way I'm really interested in using them, but tried it once, it wasn't the way I hoped it would go. And so they helped me brainstorm ways to use them individually. I would love to have them out for kids to use when they're finished with work or they want to do something. But some of them have items that are mine that are maybe vintage or breakable. And sometimes it's hard to direct them, to use them. So we talked about different ways that they could do that. And they gave me some great ideas for next year. So hopefully next year I'll be able to have the kids kind of use them on their own as well. at least the older kids. We kind of figured it would be better for the older kids to be able to use them just by themselves. Yeah, so I don't know if you have any questions for the kids. That's the museums.
Well, Ainsley, Olivia, and Brett, thank you for coming in, because if it's not, if I think everybody in the audience knows, but it's summer break, right? So thank you for coming to tell us about the program. It's obvious that Mrs. McMahon has really figured out how to connect the languages that you're learning to something more real and exciting. So maybe my question for you is, what else can we do? How else have you found that we can improve the relationship between the words and languages that you're learning and your experiences?
Well, I had an idea that might not work, but it could. If the kids all had, kind of like we did this year, if the kids all had like a specific item that they were like assigned to do, and so they researched it and learned about it, and then they shared it with like each other on what they learned, or like made a big like presentation, like the whole group each put a slide about what they researched into like a slideshow, and then they can present it to their class members.
It's a great idea.
As you guys have rotated through the different countries, has there been a country or maybe two that stand out to you the most?
Probably French, because all the like monuments in there, stuff like the Eiffel Tower, and also learning about different foods there. Also,
I really like learning about Austria because there is a lot of stuff in there.
Nice.
I liked learning about Germany the most because of what they wear and like the foods that they eat.
So you can count to 10 in 5 languages now? So how many World Cup teams does that cover? That's your homework assignment. Go figure out how many of the, what are there, 30, 40 something teams? Yeah, see how many of the teams you can count to 10 in their native language.
Did any of you come out saying, oh my gosh, this is something I really want to study moving forward? Like, this is my language, I want to pursue it? Or was it just good having the introduction to all of them?
It felt hard to pick one.
Mhm.
I liked all of them, but the one that I thought like could be a language that everyone could kind of learn, and that you could use not only in America but in different countries is probably Spanish. And on learning that makes people really interested in getting to also go to the places.
the one that I wanted to study from now on was Spanish, because there's a lot of Spanish-speaking countries. And if I ever take a trip there, and I can speak with people and have a really good time.
That's one thing that I've really enjoyed about teaching this is I feel like when the kids come out, they don't come out saying, well, am I still going to take language? Or what I used to teach Spanish, which is awesome, but I found that kids would say, oh, I already know it after an hour a week, and they didn't know it. Or they would just like feel like they were done with it, or maybe that wasn't the language that hooked them. But I've found kids saying, yeah, not, oh, am I going to keep taking language, but which language am I going to keep taking? And also just learning to be more open-minded about people that are different from themselves. And yeah, it's been really cool, the shift in the curriculum. Yeah, it's awesome.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming and appreciate your time.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, yeah.
Grab my suitcase and go.
Yeah. That was fun. Okay. Item 5.2 for action, approval of the 25-26 final budget amendment. Anna.
Well, hello again. Starting out again with our timeline, just as a reminder that we talked a little earlier in the 26-27 budget presentation of where we are. This is our final step in the budgeting process for the 25-26 school year, and kind of done until the audit's complete and we begin to look at amending the 26-27 budget once revenues are known in late fall, and we'll bring you that budget revision in next March. Disclaimer again that the amount of variance captured in the audit will impact the final fund balance numbers. The predictions in this 25-26 final amendment were locked in on June 9th to be able to prepare board packet documents, and a 1% variance within this budget is approximately $1.19 million. Looking at our 25-26 general fund snapshot from where we started, our first amendment and our final revision. This is our second and final budget amendment for the year. It represents numbers as of June 9th, as we had previously just stated, to be able to have things locked in to get the board packet out on time. There will likely be a few additional variances within here just based on timing of everything coming in, and the final fund balance will change once the audit's complete. You will notice within here we are showing an increase in revenues of approximately $2.6 million. That's primarily due to increases in property taxes received, 147A2 MIPSR's cost offset revenue, one of those categoricals we talked about earlier, as well as our final Title I allocation. We are showing a decrease in expenditures of approximately $1.2 million. That's most notably due to decreases in software licenses that we had budgeted and that either came in less expensive or that we decided not to pursue, as well as some cost savings, primarily in unfilled paraprofessional positions. In terms of major adjustments, we didn't really have anything of major impact since the March amendment, more of just small little parts here and there. That's all culminating in to show a final total fund balance of 26.7%, or approximately $31.9 million. Are there any questions on the 25-26 final budget amendment?
No?
All right. Do I have a motion to approve item 5.2?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Member Craig, support by Member Horowitz. Any further discussion or questions on 25-26 final budget amendment? This does require a roll call vote. I'll ask Brad to help me with that. Do you mind doing our roll call vote?
President Roush,
Yes.
myself, Trustee Blasey, yes. Trustee Craig,
Yes.
Trustee Horowitz.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Item 5.3 for action, approval of the 26-27 general operating budget. Anna.
So this is now the official action, now that we've gone through our truth in budget and taxation hearing, and we've offered the opportunity for the public to comment. Now it's time for the board to be able to take action on adopting the 26-27 general operating budget.
Thanks, Anna. Is there a motion for item 5.3, approval of the 26-27 general operating budget?
So moved.
Support. However, can we make our approval of the budget conditional on the understanding that we will continue to look for ways to reduce our expenditures throughout the year, save costs?
So a vote is a vote, but we welcome your feedback and collective direction to keep working at this. Yes.
Yeah, I would say that in addition to what you said, and obviously we're going to try and be as efficient with our use of funds as possible. But I think it's incumbent upon all of us too to advocate for revenue side too, right? And it's both the profit and the loss side of the P&L. So, I think that's one of the things that our responsibility to the district, especially as board members, is to make sure we're advocating for those revenue sources to be secured and make sure that the legislator understands, even if you have this top line number of $250 million or $250 per student, but you cut foundational or categoricals at the same time, that means we have less dollars to educate our students, especially for the ones that need it the most. So as I think the law requires, we will constantly update our budget as those new sources of information come in. But I agree with you that, we're always going to be looking for spots to continue to figure out how to cover people if we have attrition or do things in a different way. That's why bidding is so important, right? So, yep, I agree. Any other discussion or comments, questions? All right. All in favor? Oh, sorry. This is a roll call vote as well. But Brad, can you take roll on 5.3, please?
President Roush?
Yes.
Trustee Blasey is yes. Trustee Craig?
No.
Trustee Horowitz?
Yes.
Okay, majority.
So for budget, though, let's talk about this for a minute. For budget, you have to have a quorum of the board members,
So
majority of the board members,
correct.
even if
Majority of the full number of board members. So a 4-3 vote, the budget does not pass.
So if we don't have a budget,
So a vote has been taken, just as a point of order here.
Yep.
A vote has been cast. So I think we can shift back into dialogue now, if you'd like, and have more conversation about that. And if there is the board's pleasure, of course, to put forth another vote, you're welcome to do that. But let's continue talking about it, and I'll let you facilitate that conversation.
so maybe Mackie, I'll open the floor to you, but are there certain things in the budget that you want to see different, or maybe help us understand?
That's a big shortfall. And from when I don't know that we've had enough time as a board with the budget. When we had what was called a workshop a couple months ago, there really wasn't any detail that we could dig into, but also the best number that we had in terms of the shortfall, from my recollection, was like $8 million. So while maybe some of the expenditures have been reduced, there's another $5 million here. And I can't say that I understand enough of the process that you all went through in making these decisions to support the budget.
So what is the challenge then for the district if we put this on our very next meeting and we have close to full attendance of the board and we go back at this and or answer any questions that have arisen over the last 30 days and answering those or clarifying those? What position does that put the district in if we have a budget that is not approved?
Well, we legally need to have a budget approved by the end of the month.
Okay.
We'll be sharing here shortly that we do have a special board meeting. We'll be announcing on the 29th for facility planning and discussion. We certainly could revisit the budget then, and if certainly more explanation and education needs to happen among board members, we can do that individually, or if needed, have an additional board meeting for an additional public workshop. But the bottom line is we will need to have an approved budget in order to be compliant. I guess I'll come back to, your comment, approval with a clear direction that we need to keep sharpening our pencils and finding these savings. I'll also just remind our board that, this is based on our estimates from the state budget. We don't quite know where that's going to come in yet. We could be pleasantly surprised. I'm looking at Anna, maybe not. So this is all still a budget for that reason. We have an amendment period by design in order to, again, try to bring all of this into closer alignment over the course of the year. Brad, to answer part of your question more directly, certainly if we wait until we have a full board present here, again, it's the majority of the full board of 7. I don't claim to know how the other 3 board members might vote. But I want to respect the fact that Trustee Craig has some questions and needs some additional information.
And we probably won't all 7, we probably don't have all 7 for that special meeting.
I think that's true.
Okay.
I think at least one member is traveling.
Okay.
But we could allocate part of that meeting, and obviously we could have individual meetings prior to that. We could allocate part of that meeting to a mini budget workshop or something along those lines.
We certainly can. And if there are questions now that can be answered, we're happy to do that to the extent of our ability. Brian and Anna, and of course being our lead, the 3 of us have sort of looked at this more closely. So if there are some unanswered questions right now, we're happy to take a stab at those if that brings some additional clarity in real time.
I'd prefer that we look at it at the end of the month, at the next meeting.
So let's discuss maybe like practically what we need to make sure that we see. Because when I look at it, we dipped into strategically built a fund balance, right? We worked really hard to build a fund balance, and we said, hey, with the COVID dollars that are coming in, we want to make sure that we save these, use some of them immediately, but also save some of them to make sure that we support students for the long haul, not just for 3 years, but more like 6 to 10 years. Last year, we came in at, the budget that we just approved, we came in at half of what we used half of the deficit that we planned to use. I struggle a little bit with, I know that we have presented what is an extremely conservative budget.
Yes, we have.
And without the state passing their budget, we got into this issue last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
State didn't pass a budget, so we were flying blind. We're doing that again, and this is why we have to hold our legislators accountable to actually pass a budget. And we took a $3 million reduction in the categoricals. 1% variance equals 1.22 million, 2% equals 2.44. That alone right there, those 2 things close half the budget gap. And if we need to get it to 0, there's nowhere else to cut but people.
Right? Are you saying get it to 0, get the shortfall from 13 million to 0?
No, I'm trying to figure out what do we have to do to get the board to consensus on what is our goal?
Of course, you might have consensus. There's not everybody's here, so. Am I wrong about the workshop, the number that we had for the shortfall was 8 million?
The shortfall was a just quick snapshot of the major factors, but was not ever intended to be a reflection of the entire budget.
So what accounts for what are the factors that were not major that we didn't hear about until today?
I wouldn't say that there's necessarily major. I mean, at that point, I think we only had the governor's budget, so we didn't even have the House and Senate. I would have to double check on timing. We had at least the governor's. We might have had glimpses at one other one, but there was still at least one that wasn't there. So we did not have very good ideas for revenue estimates at that point. Knowing that there were some changes within the MPS's cost offsets, which are one of our major categoricals, went into this budget as an impact. Within there, too, we have not finalized staffing at that point of looking through our enrollment projections and courses, especially at the secondary level. It's just the April budget workshop is a very early time period where it's kind of a snapshot. And I would say at this point, with not really having our state budgets anymore, is really designed to be more of a historical look back of where we've been, with just a brief glimpse into where we might be headed. And I don't believe that it's intended to be used as kind of a set in stone portion, but more as a projection of where we are headed.
This summer I sat through, unfortunately, several of the city council budget meetings where they're also going to experience a shortfall, a much smaller one percentage-wise, to my recollection. And there was just a lot more rigor in terms of information presented to the council and then review of it than what we've gone through. And I'm not doubting that you guys have gone through it, but, you know, where I stand is for this large of a shortfall, even though it may be covered by the general fund, the fund balance, I just don't feel comfortable saying yes, just with the amount that we've engaged or not engaged with these numbers as a board.
Are there, just trying to make sure that we get all of the information that you're seeking presented in a way that's comprehensive enough and into detail enough. Do you have, I mean, obviously I'll work with Penny offline and the team on making sure that we get that next level of granularity. Are there any other specific things you want presented?
No, but I'm happy to work with Penny too in the meantime between now and the end of the month to address my concerns to the extent that they can be.
Okay.
So essentially what you were looking for is April budget workshop versus 26-27 budget proposal, maybe a little bit of a variance report of what changed.
I thought it was interesting that it was called a budget workshop and prioritization, but that's not what I experienced when we had the meeting.
Okay.
And I was hoping for, yes, more engagement. And certainly if there was not such a dramatic shortfall, even though it can be covered, that might have been a different story.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Item 5.4 for action, Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution. Penny.
It's me. Yes, I have for you tonight our membership resolution into the Michigan High School Athletic Association. This is pretty much the same as we did last year and in previous years, and this is coming to you for your approval This is both for our high schools and our middle schools, I should point that out.
Is there a motion for item 5.4?
So moved.
Can I ask a question? Can you remind us what this actually gets for us?
It is our ability to be part of the organization. It commits us to following their rules and regulations, and it's basically our sort of ticket into the game.
Support.
Motion by Craig, support by Horowitz. Any discussion or questions on MHSAA membership resolution?
Our new school. Are any of those students eligible to play sports?
I'm going to look to Ken because we've started to have these conversations, but they're not as part of this agreement because it is well, I'll let you speak to this.
Yeah, because it's a separate school and so forth, that enrollment would have to be counted in. So future enrollment increases would then be counted and might move up divisions. Like, we have to really look at this with an eye towards what's best for all kids, as well as what's best for the current schools that are competing, and whether or not we would want to make that decision or not. But at this point, especially as we start off with a pilot school, would not think that these kids would be playing sports necessarily, because they're looking at alternative and getting on with their post-high school careers and life. So,
Any other questions or comments?
Is at what? Trying to think of how to phrase this. How many students would need to be enrolled in that school for us to jump divisions?
quite a few, but we don't
Okay.
know where exactly down the road.
Got it.
So to open that can of worms at this point, we're just not ready, and we haven't sat down and made that decision. We've been more concentrating on making sure that the education, the building, and everything else is ready. And so at this point, we just haven't made the conscious decision that we'd want to do that. But it varies by sport as well. It's much more complicated than when I played. It was just 4 divisions. So it was a lot bigger jump. But nowadays with different sports, you have up to 8 divisions in some of them and so forth. So it's a little bit easier to move up divisions and so forth. If in the end, that decision, when we sit down as a district team, we decide that that's what we want to do, is to have them compete, because they could do through co-ops and whatnot, play with the other schools, we would then make that decision, I think, and look at it realistically once we got the school actually up and going.
All right. All in favor of approving item 5.4, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5.5, facility planning update and workshop. Stephen from GMB is going to join us today. Again, just want to say thanks to the public for those that have engaged. Those that have reached out directly to board members is highly appreciated, and please keep doing so. Value your input and have picked up a lot of creative ideas from engagement with the public, so please keep reaching out. And I'll turn it over to Stephen.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Happy summer break. Can you not hear this back here?
Try again. It sounded like it picked you up the second time.
Can you hear me now? Move it up higher.
Try the other one next to you.
all good. Okay, is that better? Not better.
Might just have to hold it.
I'll just hold it.
There you go.
All right. So as we get started today, and just kind of like a preview, we talked a lot the last time about different bond, ways you could look at a bond scenario, and there was questions and stuff about sinking funds. And so a lot of this is built tonight on just kind of what would a sinking fund look like for the district, and how does that work into this whole roadmap that we're trying to build for future funding. So as a reminder, this collective team is using the TRIDGE as an analogy of how we work through this. There's, 3 groups that we're all working together to have a collective plan as we move forward. There's the steering team, the greater community, and then the board and the schools and district administration. So we've talked about previously, what does this roadmap for the district look like? And how do we get to the end of this roadmap and keep going? We kind of recognize the fact that something probably needs to happen starting in November as the first phase of this roadmap, and looking at what does that first stop in the road actually look like as we move forward, while keeping in mind that we need to spend the resources we have to the best of our abilities and be good stewards of the public dollar. So if we look at these 2 potential roadmaps, they both start slightly different. So the first roadmap on the left is in November, where we look at a sinking fund and a bond both on the ballot together. In that roadmap, we would continue down the road, most likely with nothing happening in 2028. And then in 2035 is kind of that first step where you would see a 0 mil increase. So you would start paid off the previous bond debt to a point where you could go for a 0 mil increase and keep your bond levels consistent and the same. And then 2036 would be the renewal of the sinking fund that would have been voted on in 2026. So that's what one roadmap would look at. As part of that roadmap, kind of as a reminder of what we talked about the last time, anything that is voted upon in November of this year, by the time you factor in getting the capital funds through the selling of the bonds, the design, the bidding, and construction for the project, any new large-scale project isn't online until 2032. So in that roadmap, that's when that building comes online. If we look at the second roadmap, this is just going for a sinking fund. I think there was a lot of conversation on this at the last board meeting. Just going for a sinking fund in November of 2026 to get the process started. And then in 2028, going for a bond at that point. And then still using that 2035 point as that 0 mil bond increase. And 2036 as the renewal of that sinking fund from November of 26. 2 years delay of voting on the bond, 2 years delay of when that new building would open. So in that roadmap, 2034 is the point where you're moving into the any newly constructed large-scale facility as part of that bond project. And we talked a lot about kind of this idea of what's the cost of waiting, right? Like what does that look like? And so we've looked at two different bond scenarios here, and then what that equates to in total dollars, both from a November of this year, a 2028 vote, and a 2035 0 mil increase. So from a November 2026 standpoint, 2 mil bond, $190 million, 2.5 mil bond, $229 million. These are slightly different than what we've been carrying and projecting up to this point, but this reflects the updated county tax rolls. It also looks at a 5% interest rate and then uses a 2.75% growth rate for the first 5 years and a 1.75% growth rate for every year after that point. They also, in both the November of 2026 and the 2028 new bond, build off of what is being maintained as a 2.5 millage collection on bond debt. So if we look at the first line of a 2 mil bond, if you vote in November of 2026, $190 million is what that would anticipate to generate. If you wait until 2028, it's $199 million is what that would look like. When you go for a 0 mil increase in the 2035 year, if you vote in 2026, it's $62 million, and then your total is $252 million over the 10-year time frame that those bond votes would be. If you look at the 2.5 mil scenario, $229 million this November. If you wait until 2028, it's $240 million. A 0 mil increase in 2035 is 49 based on a 2026 vote. Slightly different if you go for 2028. First time voting, and then total for that millage amount. If you vote in 2026, it's $279 million. If you vote in 2028, it's $283 million. So this kind of is a way to see the total millage amounts for those kind of two mills, plus the total that would be generated, and then when you would have different bond votes and what that would generate at those times. Again, some of the longer term is based on projection of taxable value and using estimates for the taxable value at that point. As a reminder, though, there always is escalation costs to the projects that we're working on. And so a $140 million large-scale project that we would work on today with escalation of about 4 to 4.5% every year, builds up fast. And so, that same project 2 years from now could be $148 million. So just as a way of looking at, well, yes, if you delay a vote, there's a $11 million difference. There's also $8 million increase in total cost by the time you get there. So then, if also looking at this roadmap, statistically, what does that look like for, on average across the entire state of Michigan? So the top chart is the sinking fund and bond passage rates for the past 5 years. So you can see sinking fund historically has a higher passage rate than bonds. Sinking fund average over the past 5 years is about 93%. Bond passage rate over the last 5 years is about 64%. Both of them you can kind of see starting in that 2021 year. After that is when some of their percentage and passing rates starts to go down. The second graph represents the number of districts in the last 10 years that have had both a bond and a sinking fund on the same ballot together. So there has been 14 districts in the past 10 years that have done that. All 14 districts have passed both of them when they are on the same ballot to get, not separate ballot initiatives, but when they are on the same ballot together. However, you can see not all of them were an increase, not all of them were a decrease, not all of them were cost neutral. The McBain Rural Agricultural Schools, that is the primary one where they started at 0 mils for sinking fund, 0 mils for bond debt, increased both of them, so had an overall 4 mil increase, and that one passed across the board. That one passed in their community. So just another way of looking at how this has played out in recent history throughout the state and how other communities have done it. So just a reminder of what this chart is. The first two columns are sinking fund, what they generated before, what they generated after the vote, then bond debt before vote, bond debt post vote, and then total mills between bond and sinking fund pre-vote and post vote. So then we've talked also about what you can spend sinking fund and what you can spend bond dollars on. So we had presented this slide once before that was put together from PFM of just kind of a high-level itemized list of what you can spend the different different monies on. And there's a lot of times there's the most kind of ambiguity between what's considered a repair, what's considered maintenance, and what's considered renovation. So wanted to take a quick look at a couple examples of what that means. So say we took one of these doors that are anywhere that's here. If I have a hinge that's squeaky, if I WD-40 that hinge, that's considered maintenance. So I cannot spend sinking fund dollars on it, and I cannot spend bond dollars on it. If I repair the hinge, so if I take the hinge off and I put a new hinge on there, now that's a repair, and I can spend my sinking fund dollars on it, but I can't spend my bond dollars on it. If I replace the door in its entirety, that's considered a renovation, and now I can spend either sinking fund dollars or bond dollars on that door. And then if we look on the right, it's kind of a high level of what those definitions mean. So maintenance, keep something working, generally considered an operating expense. So your annual boiler tune-up, filter replacement, carpet cleaning, stuff like that. A repair is you fix something that's broken or deteriorated. So you could repair a leaking roof, you could repair cracked masonry, you could repair a failed pump. When you get into renovation, it's starting to look at an improvement, replacement, or modernization of a system beyond simple repair. So like entire HVAC systems or complete roof replacements or classroom modernization. I think the biggest caveat to the classroom modernization is sinking funds cannot be spent on furniture. Any furniture improvement, desks, anything like that that can only come out of bond funding. So then, if we look at some potential ways of getting to...
Sorry, Stephen, to interrupt you. So if we're completely building new, is that considered renovation and could fall into either bucket?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there might have to go back to this slide. New construction is a separate line item here. So new construction is yes on both. It's right under renovations. So we looked at a few different ways of, a 1 or 2 mil sinking fund and what the district could do with that money based on kind of big buckets over the course of 3 years at a time, just kind of looking at what that money can be spent on. We did use the guiding values that the steering team put together as a way of identifying what those different paths could look like for how the sinking fund is put together. So if you look, when we get to it, sinking fund 1A is a 1 mil sinking fund. It looks more holistically at some of the equity things that we heard as we, talked between the, educational assessment, the facility assessment. I'll bring all of those together. Kind of starts there and weaves in infrastructure as funding allows. The 1B is a 1 mil sinking fund, but tries to do a heavier hit on some of the infrastructure items and then weaves in some of those other things as we go along each year. So if we look at a 1 mil sinking fund, you can kind of see here consistently in all the scenarios and what we've talked with the administration on is 2 buses a year is kind of the best pace for replacement of buses. So consistently in all these scenarios, 2 bus replacement every single year is carried through. Buses can be purchased from sinking fund, so that's why it's carried here. If you look at this scenario, first 3 years are spent on some safety and security, that's cameras or PA systems, classroom teacher instructional technology like smart boards or projectors or stuff like that, have that throughout the district. And then infrastructure needs in that first 3 years is looking at some of the buildings that we've have maybe a longer term life within the district moving forward. So like roofing, anything that was in the facility assessment as a 1 to 3 year need at Jefferson's roof, that fits within those first 1 to 3 years. When we get into the next 3 years, there's still a need to continue on the camera and PA systems throughout the district, still carry over for classroom instructional technology, infrastructure, start looking at dowel roof replacement, and then also some parking revisions that happen in those years. And then when we get to the final years, start looking at some of those bigger things, maybe fire suppression. And fire suppression is carried just as a higher level idea. It's not a code mandated thing that you must have fire suppression in your building, but if we want to look at long-term planning for how these buildings are used in collaboration spaces or using spaces outside of classrooms, there's a benefit in having buildings be fully sprinklered because it opens up how you can use those spaces once you are doing major renovations. You have more leverage in how you can use the spaces. So that's why that's one idea that's in here. When we go to 1B, this is looking at, let's look at some of those roofing things just from the start. So while it may not be something that's spent in the first year, within those first 3 years, you'll have generated enough funds from those sinking funds to look at, roofing items at Northeast to get you by until the point that there is a final decision of what's happening with Northeast. But making that investment to get you to that point with also Jefferson. And then weaving in the same things we talked about in the first slide there, it just kind of moves them from, if they were in year 2, it might have shifted them to year 4, for example, because a roof at Northeast has a higher expense to it. And so then it shifted some of those other dollars down the road. And when we get to 2 mills, there's a lot more opportunity for the district to do stuff with because you are generating $6 million a year. So we can still have the same high level buckets that we've talked about, the safety and security, the teacher instructional technology, infrastructure needs, but you can accomplish a lot more of the infrastructure needs when you're at a 2 mil sinking fund. So you can do more of the roofs, you can start getting into the building envelopes, and so a lot of that can start happening right off the bat because you have a lot more capital funds to do something with. When you get into years 4 through 6 for these scenarios, you can start touching on the infrastructure items that were from the facility assessment and also get a lot more into some of those programmatic and educational assessment items that we heard as we walked through the schools with the different teachers. For example, I think in there's Jefferson lockers is in there. There's a road to get from the front of Jefferson to the back, so that's easier access for music and stuff like that. Some of that fits into those buckets when we get to that total dollar.
So is this slide supposed to say 2.0?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, they do say 1.0.
Stephen, remind me, 1 mil gets us how much?
1 mil is about $3.1 million. 2 mils, double that, 6.2.
So one of the things I would challenge us to think about, right, is Anna can correct me, but I think when I was looking through the final 25-26 budget amendment, we spent $3.1 million in maintenance out of our capital.
I will have to take a look at final numbers for you.
Is about $3 million correct?
I believe. I will double check for you.
Okay. So just for purposes of discussion, we got $100 million in the general fund. We're taking $3 million away from the dollars that we need to educate students with and putting it towards capital purchases that are outside of our bond. So we're spending money on the boilers at Dow High. We're spending money on repairs and infrastructure and everything else that wasn't necessarily planned, but these are maintenance items that come up. As you kind of think about doing a sinking fund, let's say that we do a 1 mil sinking fund or a 2 mil sinking fund. The way that I've always thought about a sinking fund is it can help us relieve constraints on the general fund. So how much of what you're showing us here exhausts the full usage of the sinking fund, and we're still paying $3 million out of pocket, out of the general fund, for items that just break over time, versus how much planning room should we leave to make sure that we have some of those sinking fund dollars available to us to do these repairs, like Dow High needs new boilers. I think Penny sent us a note on a lightning strike in the most recent storms. The chillers at Dow High just got hit by lightning last week.
Yeah.
Like, how do you suggest we think about that?
So in the projections of where these ones are at, if we look at like a tabularized table of where that's at the end of each year, there's still a healthy amount that's left to be carried over to be able to accomplish some of these things. So I think in the 1 mil scenario, on average in those first 6 years, there was probably a $300,000 to $400,000 carryover. as like leaving it as that buffer to, to try to address those things. In the 2 mil, I think probably closer to the 5 or 6 mark, carried over $100,000 carried over to the end of the year to be able to address those things, which you kind of get bump ahead slides here. When we look at the roadmap of a sinking fund, while the plan may be this nice straight line of we can keep these big picture ideas, right? Infrastructure. That's what we know we're going to cover infrastructure with our sinking fund. The roadmap of how we address infrastructure may look very different year over year because of those things that come up. The boiler that all of a sudden needs to be replaced, the chiller that was struck by lightning. But because those are sinking eligible fund expenses, you have the ability to use your sinking fund to do that and be able to, address those needs at that time. So it's kind of, I think there's a good, how you can plan your sinking fund that you're going to attack these big buckets as you go forward year over year and have that plan in place of what you want to address. But there's still benefit of starting every year, every fiscal year of, let's look at what are our priorities that have come up over the last year, what are priorities for this year to make sure we know we're covering these. Because your priority by the time you get to year 3 may be something brand new that you didn't realize. But the sinking fund allows you that leverage to be able to do that. So moving forward, this is kind of where we're at in the process. So June 7th, we had the community survey that was sent out with the mailers and the advertisements from the district. Community survey closed. The phone polling that was conducted, that ended at the end of last week. So these 2 weeks are being spent to analyze the community survey results and also the polling analysis and see how they align with each other. I will say from the survey response that the GMB was able to see those surveys come in. There was very good participation. I think there was over 1,800 respondents to that survey, and there was over 85% completion rate. So it went from question 1 all the way to question 20. So that was really positive. In the event that they didn't make it to question 20, all their responses up to the point that they stopped were still captured in the survey results that we received. So then in June 14th or 15th today, board meeting we're at. Tomorrow we're hosting an MPS staff engagement session to update them on the process and let them know where we're at. June 23rd, next week, is our final steering team committee meeting. We're coming together with that team in prep for the June 29th board meeting, where the steering team will present their final resolution on their recommendation to the board. July 15th, there'll be another community engagement session to update the community on where the steering team made their recommendation to the board. July 20th is your board meeting to look at the finalized scope, and then week of 8/3 for a board meeting to approve ballot language and prep for the August 11th requirement of resolution to the county. And then just as a reminder, we're working through this process with all collective groups to build consensus. And I think the best way of describing that is the bottom quote of, consensus doesn't mean everyone gets exactly what they want, but it means everyone can support the path moving forward. So that's the goal we're working towards. Any questions?
Stephen, just for clarification, on the 1A and 1B slides, the list of items were not in order of priority. They were just potential
Correct.
Expenditures.
Yep. Looking at, yes. Yep. Yes.
It's kind of where my head was going to, and, well, I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but I was wondering how many of those are wants versus needs, and how do we truly get down to what is necessary. And, for example, like when it comes to, I think you mentioned smart boards. I'm not really sure what a smart board is, but like, how do we how do we work through a process to whether or not we need one versus want one, and what student outcomes will we see because we have that smart board or we don't, right? And that's what probably the level of detail I think we would have to get down to figure out how we actually scope a sinking fund.
Plus, if we look at how our community feedback came in, the meeting that I was at, and I know that I've heard some of the feedback from the other meetings, the number one priority was infrastructure. So we'd want to probably put infrastructure at the top and look at what we could fund in infrastructure and then move on to the various other items.
Yep. And I'll say that the other items that are there are items that were consistently, they're all items that come from the facility assessment. So they're all items that are from the facility assessment, and they're also all items that came up as common themes throughout every walkthrough. And then, yeah, that's what I was trying, those two things.
Maybe the other thing too is, to some extent, maybe it naturally falls out, because if we go back to the facility assessment that Clark, GMB, and Three Rivers did, or just over $500 million in needed repairs over the next 10 years. And even in our wildest dreams, you're at 50% hit rate, right? So, yeah, that prioritization process is going to be forced to come out, even at these numbers. But I think really working through that in a very precise way is going to be critical for us. Any other questions for Stephen? All right.
Is there any other information that you all feel you need moving into our final conversation? Certainly, at our next engagement, we'll have data from the steering team or the recommendations from the steering team, as we mentioned. We'll provide an overview of the community input data. You've seen some sinking fund options here, bond options. It's what else do we need to surface for you so that once you have all of that, you can make your best dialogue and make your best decision. I'm totally putting you on the spot. You can email or call anytime also, and we'll get that for us.
For me, I don't know if there's more that I need, but the earlier that I can get it, even if it's piecemeal, right? Even if it's bits and even if it's just the polling data first, so I can start looking at that. So I'm not trying to digest everything at one time. That would be fantastic.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate all the work that you've been doing and engaging the community. All right, item 6 is request to address the board. I had a couple people sign up ahead of time. Sydney Freeman. Welcome, Sydney.
Hello, I'm Sydney Freeman. I'm a member, I'm a student at Midland High, and I'll be an incoming sophomore in the fall. Some things that I'd like to speak about, considering the proposal of a combined high school specifically, is that I feel like it'd be very beneficial as a community if there was student input, since students would mainly be affected. Some considerations of this is how the general opportunities for students will be affected both negatively and positively. Specifically how sure there will be more clubs available and more sports available, but for the students that really want to be the top dogs of it, might not get the opportunity if there's so many students in a school. Also, specifically on the educational part of it, I feel like this was my freshman year, and I specifically struggled in the sense of going from a middle school to a high school that has around a little under 1,000 students of that. If that number were to double, I feel like it would be very stressful like situation to like learn as best as you can in it. So I know it's summer and getting student input would be very hard in this time of year, but I think if there were to like be like outreach and like trying to like gain student support on this matter, it would probably be very beneficial to your guys' cause. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Sue.
you.
Jennifer Farron. Welcome, Jennifer.
Do I need to say my address too, or?
No.
No, okay. Hi, I'm just here again because I'm very, I'm not like an emotional attachment to MPS or Dow, the rivalry, but I just see the vision. I'm against the combined high school 100%. It would just take opportunities away from academics, sports, clubs, music. There's just so many variations that I'm totally against that. I would support something like Help in Northeast, like remodel, but I'm against of supporting my tax dollars to remodel Northeast to have it moved to Midland High from like the last, that I viewed on the last board meeting where a board rep said it could be moved possibly. I would be against that. I bought my house in Midland in 2017. My daughter went to East Lawn for 1 year and then had to move to Central Park to the new elementary. So we've already been through a lot of changes. So I just feel like as a parent, I brought my kid here from Phoenix. We came from a bigger population and I just wanted her to come to like a smaller community to have more opportunities. So like combining a high school would not honor that prospect in my opinion. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Renita Bonadis. Welcome.
Good evening. As I mentioned last month, we were curious if the new bond debt millage rate would be lowered to the Form 3881 estimate of the millage needed. The rate shown was 2.19 on that form, and I see from looking at the agenda packet that the district is proposing to keep the rate at the 2.50 that was levied last year on the bond debt. This rate keeps about $940,000 extra in the reserves on top of the $606,000 from last year. So that's leaving about $1.5 million for future bond payments or campaign millage adjustments to the public. So in answer to my question last month, will it drop to the 2.19 mills from the Form 3881? The answer is no. It seems the district's still not building trust and transparency, yet this board and administration continue to make those claims as you approach the next bond. Another item in the agenda packet is the anticipated staffing and student enrollment levels. I don't remember hearing how MPS experienced a 1.6% decrease in enrollment this current school year of 142 students at any of the board meetings. That's a significant number compared to the projection that we heard a year ago. And this year, the projection, excuse me, is 41. Excuse me. That number doesn't seem to reflect any potential impact of a charter school moving into the area that is going to be a K-6. And I noticed that the number of teachers is increasing by 10, even with the student count going down. It's a 4.9% less than when the district in 2008 and 9 had 1,730 more students. So there are a significant number of parapros being hired as well for next year. It's a 31% increase over the 2009 when our, again, enrollment was much higher. And finally, the pre-primary is dropping from 14 to 8 for staffing. I'm curious why the big drop of 42% for this next year. I thought on the last bond campaign, the community was told we need lots of classrooms through all the elementary buildings for this age group. So that free pre-K was the future to say, so to say, but I'm just curious what changed. Bottom line, the district has shrunk by almost 20% since the 2008-9 school year, yet staffing was 888 back then, and it is projected to be 885 next year. So I guess I can't see why the district, I can see why the district with the 75 to 80% funding going to staff and salaries, there's not much left for buildings because our staffing is at a level that required a much higher student body. So how does the board plan to close this gap? Thank you.
Thanks, Renita. Joe Bonadis.
Greetings. Returning to some comments I made in April, now that we have some more data. During the May 2024 bond campaign, Member Lauterbach had mentioned how well-positioned MPS was for getting a low interest rate because it had a strong fund balance. In the dark times of 2015, we had a risk score of 3 from the state, which determines how much our excess is. Then we had 8 years of zeros. Now come 2025, the risk score is back at 1, and it will end up being higher because of the information that we got today. The fact that we went from 8 to 13 in 2 months was amazing. For that difference just was very concerning. Basically, lots more money being spent on fewer students and running the savings account down as you go. It does sound like this board is willing to ask some more hard questions on controlling the strategy because your slope is in the very wrong direction, and that trend is going from a healthy to an unhealthy fund balance. Another year of 13 after the upcoming one, and you're going to go below 10%, and that will really mess up your interest rate on any potential bond. And even if a miracle were to happen, you are not going to get a new building for several years. Therefore, the fact that maintenance was said to go up, I appreciated that fact because we got to keep what we got going. There was a phone survey that occurred. There was no notice to the public that it occurred, so I understood from some people that they blew it off because they didn't think it was anything real or official. And many people apparently thought it was spam. I got one of the calls, and the survey operator apparently had gotten much abuse from other people on that one because he was very glad that he talked to someone who was actually civil with him. There were some errors in the information presented by that surveyor on that thing, and many presuppositions, which I pointed out to him, were a little misleading. One question that caused me to literally burst out laughing was if I would support a 1 mil sinking fund if there was high transparency on how the money was spent. Wow, has there ever been high transparency on any ongoing financial activity from MPS? The assumption of trust inherent in even asking this question was amazing. I'm on the record not opposing a sinking fund, but the level of transparency that we see currently is not high, and it needs to be something significant if the public is going to trust again. Ironically, speaking of transparency, after many years of the agenda package containing the full annual SETSAG insurance policy in the June package, this year we got a little one-page summary. Some significant increases from years past, have no idea why, because it wasn't there. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Bill Domina. Welcome, Bill.
Hi. Good evening. At a couple board meetings ago when we voted for the Chromebooks, we heard concerns about the way we're teaching our kids through this technology. And I know that we have a committee. I think you're leading it, but I would like to see an agenda item on every meeting to say, where is that? I've been in the corporate world many years, and a lot of times committees are where ideas go to die. I'm sure that you're working on it, but I want to see progress. I think this is a metric for absolute increase in the students' proficiency, because I think big education tech has really sold us a bill of goods. And I would encourage every one of you who hasn't read it to read The Digital Delusion. I think some of you have that book, but I think it should be required for everyone on that committee because even if you disagree with it, you would have the counterpoint to address. Because I think this is one of those things where we can make a difference in the educational outcome, just like you've increased phonics focus. I think we're going to see an increase in, I'd like to see you focus on, tell us, how did it go? Because I think it probably made a big difference. The second thing I'd like to talk about is I really would like Mr. Muggenberg to potentially post his maintenance documents on the website. I mean, in my corporate life, I did a lot of work with Dow's Global maintenance documents on committees and stuff and wrote a lot of them. And it's really quite easy to put them into save them from Word to PDF and put them out there. I mean, you might find that there are people with a lot of experience that says, hey, wait a minute, I can probably save you a lot of money in this case because of my experience. That was right with all kinds of people with experience. So I think it would be helpful to say, okay, let's see everything you have on roof maintenance, on boiler maintenance. What's your predictive preventive maintenance strategies? I mean, it has to be written. It can't be all reactive. And if it is reactive, we need to fix that. So that's what I'd like to see. I think it'd be a pretty benefit, because if it is the gold standard, you know, and we're doing everything right, then we can make sure that everyone knows that it's right and take away that doubt that some in the community have. So I think it's a positive for everyone. So I guess I just like to ask for that, and you know, that book again is really eye-opening, and I think we can make a real difference in student outcome with just the way we teach a little differently, going back to interaction. And the last thing, my granddaughter, her example was she sat down and did every capital of countries in the world on Google from her Northville 6th grade class. My son said, oh, so where's this? I don't know. All she did was complete the digital requirement. She had no idea what she learned. So that's where I think we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Stephen Carver. Welcome, Stephen.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm Stephen Carver. I was here a month ago and presented the poem about kindergarten kindness, and I'm going to bring a little more kindness tonight, maybe a little levity. The last time I spoke, I'm volunteer at Central Park this year, specifically for kindergarten students and their early literacy and reading skills. And in the last couple of days of school, we took a field trip, and I got to participate in that over to Dow Gardens, where they have, if you haven't been to the dinosaur exhibit, which in the kindergarten eyes is a big deal. And, you know, I didn't ride the bus, not supposed to ride the bus, so we met the bus over there, and I'm waiting for the bus, and I see him get out. And again, I think it's 2 days before the end of the school year. And 5 classes of kindergarten got off the bus, and I remember standing there, little girl come up to about here on me, big eyes, and very excited. She goes, Mr. And she didn't pronounce my name. Mr. Carver, you're my favorite teacher. And you know, I volunteering, there's no compensation other than that kind of reward, and which was significant for me. And I asked her, why am I your favorite teacher? Because you like me and you taught me. Fine. I think the real reason was I bring a bag of stuffed animals, and we do a lot of creative play in the process, role playing in teaching. And at that level, it's all very concrete. So I wanted to mention that. My other purpose tonight, I really appreciated the kids from Adams. I believe they're 5th graders. They looked older. That correct, I think. And the staff and the principal there coming. The suitcase idea, very right on. I mean, showed good imagination, good creativity. I also value affective education, which includes everything from active listening. Not that any of us, you know, with these gadgets, I find it's very difficult, and people talk over each other quite a bit, and they don't listen. So I really stress affective education, which includes everything from active listening, empathic ability building. On the other end of the spectrum, we just graduated a whole bunch of seniors from the 2 high schools. I also encourage civic engagement with those students. So I'd like to see more young people involved in the process. I'm involved community civics myself. I think President Rocha said to engage with legislators and so forth, because you have some big challenges ahead of you here to approve a budget. So I encourage everyone, this is a participatory democracy, in my view. I value public education as one of the pillars of our democracy. It's essential that we carry on. And for the future of these little guys that send their favorite teacher, keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. That's everybody that signed up ahead of time. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board at this time? Okay. Item 7, administrative services. For action, approval of revised board policy 5409, graduation requirements. Penny. I'll just
Yes.
note too that we have not met since the last board meeting.
Correct. I was going to remind the board at our last meeting when we read the minutes from the Admin Services Committee that it included the review of this policy, the study of this particular policy change, and we noted that we weren't going to bring it to the full board until we knew that we had approval from the Michigan Department of Education for our new school. Now that we have that and we're moving forward, I bring to you tonight these recommended revisions to policy 5409 academic credits. The high-level summary is that we are adding our new school, the Midland Flex Learning Center. The flexible learning program will require 21.5 credits for graduation, and the alternative program, 18.5 credits. All other graduation requirements remain consistent across what is now 3 Midland Public high schools. So that is the crux of this change.
Thanks, Penny. Is there a motion to approve item 7.1?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Craig, support by Blasey. Any discussion or questions? Just maybe reiterate one part that, the policy now breaks out our standard requirements for Midland High School and Dow High School as one set, and then Midland Flex Learning separate. And Ken, to you and your team, thanks for all the work that you've put into this. I know you guys have spent a lot of time and effort, and I know you guys have had a lot of challenges getting it through the MDE as well, so thank you. All in favor of approving item 7.1, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Curriculum instruction and assessment is item number 8. And I believe there are CIA study committee meeting minutes from May 18th.
Yes. So the Curriculum Instruction Assessment CIA Study Committee met on May 18th, 2026. Present were Jennifer Ringgold, the chair, Ann Horowitz, Mikey Craig, Ken Weaver, Penny Miller-Nelson. Jen Service was also present, along with Tricia Clancy and Dr. Joy Chow. We met at the MPS administration meeting in conference rooms C and D. The meeting started at 1:30 p.m. Ken, Jen, and Tricia presented on the K-5 literacy curriculum implementation, MDE literacy guidance, and the updates to the current state laws related to K-5 literacy. Ken Weaver presented on the MI Student Voice Educator Survey results. He also presented the Special Education Staff Development Proposal. Penny Miller-Nelson updated the CIA Committee on Facility Planning, and we adjourned the meeting at 2:45 p.m.
Thank you, Ann. Item 8.2 for action textbook adoption. Ken.
Yeah, we have the following textbooks that are sitting right here for asking for action for them to be approved. We're recommending does say contingent on the available funding as approved in the 2026-27 budget. The textbooks will be used for IB Psychology, SLH, Biology A, or Accelerated Biology, and then as well to the IB Analysis and Approaches HL Pre-Calc Honors class. Also, the IB Analysis and Approaches SL1 Pre-Calc class as well too. So.
Thanks, Ken. I have a motion to approve item 8.2.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Horowitz, support by Craig. Any discussion or questions on these three books? All in favor of approving the textbooks listed in item 8.2, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item 8.3, for action, special education co-teaching model professional learning for implementation in 26-27 school year. Ken.
Yeah, district administration recommends approving the additional staff and curriculum development proposal for consideration. That was presented for consideration at the May 18th board meeting. This proposal reflects identified needs for curriculum delivery improvement, especially in co-teaching classes, which is what it will focus on. It was developed by the special education department and will focus on helping that partnership between the gen ed teacher and the special ed teacher. And you can see the costs there.
Yes. Thanks, Ken. Is there a motion for item 8.3?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Craig, support by Blasey. Any further discussion or questions on item 8.3? I know we're having to be innovative in this spot, so thank you and appreciate the work because I know it's a lot of extra things that we're scrambling at the moment. So,
yeah, we're looking forward to this and looking forward to the changes that we're going to be making with the setup of the co-teaching classes at the secondary level.
Mm-hmm. All in favor of approving item 8.3, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 9, Finance, Facilities, and Operations. 9.1, FFO Study Committee Notes from June 1st. Is that you, Brad?
Yep. Finance, Facilities, and Operations met on June 1st, 5 o'clock. Members present were myself, Scott McFarland, Becky Craig, Penny Miller-Nelson, and Anna Womack. Guests were Stephen Gunther and Mike Mogenberg, located here at this building. Meeting started at 5 o'clock. April financials were reviewed. The proposed 2026-2027 salary letter was reviewed. The 2026-27 budget and the 2025-26 June budget amendment were discussed. Administration will propose award a bid for reflooring the Midland High Auxiliary Gym. Administration will propose awarding a bid for custodial supplies. Administration will propose renewing the workers' compensation insurance policy. And administration will propose renewing the property and casualty insurance policy. And the committee discussed the date of the July FFO meeting. The committee discussed facility planning, the work of the facility steering team, and information gathered through the facility planning survey. Meeting adjourned at 6:37 p.m.
Thanks, Brad. Item 9.2 for action, the 26-27 salary letter. Anna.
Included in your board packet is our proposed 26-27 salary letter. This includes salary rates for every single affiliated or bargaining group within the Midland Public Schools, but also for our non-affiliated groups. Their salaries were reflected in the 26-27 budget, in which was presented to you this evening, and we are looking for your official approval of those rates. Again, some of those are contractually obligated and others are for our non-affiliated groups, and this will officially put those rates into effect for the 26-27 school year.
Thanks, Anna. Is there a motion to approve item 9.2?
I make a motion to approve 9.2.
Support.
Motion by Blasey, support by Craig. Any further discussion?
Oh, that was Ann.
I'm sorry. Horowitz. Thank you for noting that. Is there any further discussion or questions on item 9.2?
Nope.
All in favor of approving item 9.2, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item 9.3 for action, approval of the summer tax rate. Hannah.
Included in your board packet is a resolution asking for the City of Midland to assess half of the full rates that you saw in the presentation earlier this evening. It will ask for an assessment of 8.8020 of the 17.6040 non-homestead mills, 0.1863 of the 0.3726 hold harmless mills, and 1.25 of the 2.5 bond mills on the summer tax collection. We are asking for your support this evening of a resolution to ask the City of Midland to approve those summer tax rates.
Thanks, Anna. Is there a motion to approve item 9.3?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Horowitz, support by Craig. Any further discussion or questions? This does require a roll call vote. Brad, do you mind?
No.
Please.
President Roush?
Yes.
I vote yes. Trustee Craig?
Yes.
Trustee Horowitz?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thanks, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
Item 9.4 for action, custodial supply bid. Anna.
Bids were solicited and a tabulation has been provided for custodial supplies. There was only one bidder that was the lowest bidder in enough categories to need board approval. Administration recommends issuing a purchase order to the low bidder for toilet tissue, hard wound towels, gym floor finish, and wax paper liners for sanitary napkin receptacles, Imperial Bradley of Midland, Michigan, for $50,643.90. Operating funds will be utilized for this purchase.
Thanks, Anna. Is there a motion for item 9.4?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Blasey, support by Craig. Any further discussion or questions? Anna, why don't these things come through the REMC state bid?
That is a good question. We've put out, I think that by having it out there and allowing other companies to bid, sometimes the combinations of the bids that we receive are different from REMC.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it just seems like they would have more bargaining power, but glad that you guys put this out. All in favor of item 9.4, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9.5 for action, Midland High Auxiliary Gym reflooring. Anna.
Bids were solicited and tabulation has been provided for reflooring and refinishing the Midland High Auxiliary Gym. Administration recommends issuing a purchase order to the low bidder, Floor Care Concepts of Wyoming, Michigan, for $53,593.30. Operating funds will be utilized for this purchase.
Thanks, Anna. Is there a motion to approve item 9.5?
I make a motion to approve 9.5.
Support.
Motion by Blasey, support by Craig. Any discussion or questions on this one?
Anna, do you happen to know, and I'm guessing you don't know offhand, but when the floor was last refinished? And which gym is that?
Sure. I do not know exactly when it was refinished last, but this project is arising from the need of water damage.
Water damage, okay.
That was occurred due to a burst pipe.
Got it. Thank you.
That was going to be my question, is why just the 10 by 10 or the small section, but you answered my question. All right. All in favor of approving item 9.5, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9.6 for action, workers' comp insurance renewal. Anna.
Administration recommends renewing its workers' compensation coverage policy with the Yider Insurance Agency of Midland, Michigan. This is the sixth renewal of the policy, and the renewal rate for 26-27 coverage is $142,837.
Thanks, Anna. Is there a motion for item 9.6?
I make a motion for item 9.6.
Motion by Blazy, support by Craig. Any further discussion or questions on item 9.6?
Yes, when was the last time we put this out to bid?
We are coming up due for that. I believe it was probably about 6 years ago. But we do have within there of a constant look at our policy within YIDER.
And then I can't connect today. So I looked at it previously, but what was the renewal rate for 25, 26?
I will have to bring that up.
Any other discussion or questions?
We also did discuss in the meeting with YIDER being an independent agent, they have access to all kinds of different work comp carriers, so they are putting eyes on this. We don't necessarily get the results from that, but they are putting and making sure that we're right where we need to be. So it has been a bit since it's gone out for bid, but being an independent agent, we get the benefit of them representing a lot of lines so that they know if something was out of line, they'd bring it to us.
All in favor of approving item 9.6, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 9.7 for action, property and casualty insurance renewal. Anna.
Administration recommends renewing property and casualty insurance coverage with SATSEG of East Lansing, Michigan for a total cost of $445,278. Our current coverage expires on June 30th, 2026, and this amount is for coverage through July 1st, 2027. This is the 6th renewal of the policy.
Is there a motion for item 9.7?
I make a motion for 9.7.
Motion by Blazy, support by Craig. Any further discussion or questions?
Basically the same question as last time around. When was the last time we investigated other carriers?
6 years ago.
6 years, probably, yeah.
We have discussed in FFO of the timing of when would be best to go out for that, and have kind of collectively discussed that we don't feel that right now is the correct time to go out for bid. And for your question of that, of the renewal, it looks like last year was $399,711, and your workers' comp last year was $129,210.
All in favor of approving item 9.7, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Item 9.8 for action, gifts totaling $30,000. Anna.
We have 2 items tonight totaling $30,000 that will require acceptance on behalf of the board. These items are donations from the Nicholas Family Foundation to Dow High for their Innovation Club, $20,000 for the Amped Innovators, and $10,000 for the Algineers. We would request that you approve accepting this gift this evening.
Thanks, Anna. Is there a motion for 9.8?
So moved.
Motion by Horowitz, support by Craig. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of approving item 9.8, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 9.9 for information gifts. Anna.
The total amount of gifts listed for information only tonight is $16,717.35. These gifts this evening represent support for programs ranging from various sports teams at Midland High and Dow High, Battle of the Books winners at Adams and Jefferson, Odyssey of the Mind at Central Park, and more. As is tradition, all donors are going to be recognized in the credits of this evening's broadcast and also through board correspondence upon your behalf. We are grateful for our community's support of our students and our programs.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks to everybody that's donated to the district. Item 10, human resources. I don't believe there was a meeting since the last board meeting. So no study committee notes, but we do have one action item, item 10.1 for action retirements. Kara.
The below staff announced their retirement effective this date. Paraprofessionals Dan Glomsky from Central Park Elementary, effective June 3rd, 2026. Kim Nyland, Chestnut Hill Elementary, effective June 4th. Deanna Borkowski, Jefferson Middle School, effective June 3rd. Amy Pina, Woodcrest Elementary, effective June 3rd. Dawn Hockaday, Woodcrest Elementary, effective June 3rd. And John McClelland is Manager of Fiscal Services and Administration, effective February 26th, 2027.
Thanks, Kara, and congratulations to those dedicated staff members. Is there a motion to approve item 10.1?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Horowitz, support by Craig. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of approving item 10.1, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Item 11 are correspondence from the Board of Education to the following individuals or entities listed in the agenda packet. Item 12 are scheduled activities for information. The regular board meetings are scheduled below. I would note, and Penny, do you remember if we have to take action for to add special board meetings or just notice it? So we will just post these, but also for the public, talking about a June 29th at 4 p.m. special meeting where we would make sure to just want to note, Member Craig, that I wanted to say thank you for raising your voice and raising a couple issues that we'll make sure to follow up on and will be better because of it. So we'll follow up on a couple budget items, make sure that we get to that next level of detail on June 29th at 4 p.m. and then also do the follow-up with Stephen and the GMB team. And then tentative for August 5th as Stephen laid out that plan throughout the summer as we potentially consider either a sinking fund and or a bond, holding August 5th at 4 p.m. for discussion as well. Item 13, study session discussion. Are there any points of clarification or questions from any board members? I think we have all of our notes to make sure that we set up for success on the budget on June 29th. Just hold on a second as I look at my notes. Penny, is there maybe anything that you wanted to clarify just around staffing levels as we look forward in our budget now, or do you want to hold until June 29th?
I think we'll hold for some of the finer detail, but I will share as a reminder to the board that at our pre-primary center, through our contract negotiations, you might remember that our preschool staff are now shifting to that affiliated employee group. And so they are categorized differently in our budget.
Turn the floor over to you, Penny.
Great. I do have a couple of updates. Well, first, I just want to go back to the previous agenda item with those retirement announcements. And, you know, it's always wonderful to celebrate any staff member who's retiring from our organization. So thank you to those paraprofessionals listed. You read John McClellan's name. He's, of course, an important member of our business office and has been really important, particularly in our grants team. And so we will be really intentional about a plan for his transition, particularly given that we have Lori Holderby's retirement upon us and Hannah being new to our team. So I just want to assure you that we'll ensure some continuity there. Okay, so here are some quick updates. Well, first, just a point of celebration. Our graduation happened since we last met, and that was just a wonderful endeavor. The weather couldn't have been better, and just a great evening of celebrating our graduates. So thanks to the teams at Midland High and Dow High for all the work they've done to prepare for those, and thanks to the board for showing up and celebrating our graduates. It was a really great end to the school year. On that same celebratory note, thanks to all of our students, our staff, all of our team members, and to all of you, our parents, for ensuring that we had a great year and a really strong finish. Want to provide a quick update where we are with our elementary literacy. We continue to navigate the requirements of the Michigan Department of Education and recent legislation around literacy and dyslexia. We've also continued to examine our own data and our current system. And this analysis, coupled with our own drive for continuous improvement, has led us to the decision that we are going to shift away from our current Tier 1 literacy curriculum in our elementary buildings and seek a new resource for us to use. We will be examining the new resources available to us from that state list and identifying a few that we can pilot in our classrooms next year. We are putting the final touches, Ken and his team, on a really well-defined intentional process to do that. It will be very collaborative. We'll collect data, and ultimately that final recommendation will come before all of you as a board to make that final decision. So we'll ensure that you have all of that groundwork and information that you need to make your best decision. To be clear, we're going to continue using our current phonics resource, which is UFly, and that is one of those on the state list. We're also going to continue our commitment to the essential literacy practices, to professional learning, both individually and in teams in our elementaries. We did share this information with our elementary staff earlier this month and asked for their engagement in the process. There was a form that they could fill out if they were interested in stepping into that work sooner than later. So as we prepare for next school year, we're going to send a communication to families so that they're very aware of what this will look like and make sure that they have all the information they need. And of course, we'll bring regular updates to you as a board. Quick update on the technology work group. They met last Monday. Again, Ken and team are navigating that. It includes, again, staff and parent representatives. They are studying the topic, looking at that data, and have an additional meeting scheduled. So more to come on that. Today, I was happy to go over and visit for a few minutes with our bus drivers. You might have read a social media post, or was it an article, Katie? It was a social media post, that our bus drivers have completed a 3-day workshop. And it says a lot for them to take their summertime and come engage in 3 days of learning. This was all about the MPS Resiliency RISE approach. So this was a chance for them to have similar learning that our paraprofessionals, our teachers, our administrators have had. This helps them understand the language we're using, a little bit more about their own behavior and well-being and social emotional regulation, and how students respond and what those behaviors mean. So really just thankful for that group to come together and have that learning. Today was the 3rd day. And just a couple final notes. Summer school's underway. We're really excited and proud. We have about 260 students enrolled in summer learning in our elementaries and our high schools. This is week 2. I tried to make it over to Central Park today and just caught them right as they were finishing up and headed to the bus. So I'll go back later this week and make it over to Plymouth as well as our high schools. And then finally, board members, I just ask you to remind anyone you know who's 18 and younger that we do have the Meet Up and Eat Up program happening. I want to get these buildings right. So you can access that food program at Plymouth Park, Central Park Elementary, and the Pre-Primary Center Monday through Friday. And at Midland High, Dow High, Midland High, Dow High, and Plymouth Elementary Monday through Thursday. Breakfast is served from 8 to 9:15 and lunch from 11 to 1. There will be no service provided on Friday, July 3rd. So this is, again, for any community member, any student who's 18 and younger. And I think there's a provision too if a student is up to 26 and eligible for receiving special education services and they're enrolled in an educational program. So no kid should go hungry in our community this summer. Encourage them to visit our website for more details, or they're welcome to call here to central office.
Any quick question? Has the cell phone committee met yet? Because we have a technology committee and then we have a committee looking at cell phones in the school.
So we don't actually have a cell phone committee. The technology work group is really focused on devices and use of technology in classrooms. We are gathering feedback through the parent survey, which it was part of the technology survey. I think that's where we might have gotten a little confused on that. So Kara is leading that effort, and we've met with our admin council, elementary, middle, and high school to get their insights, looking at our current policy, the legislation, and that data. And then we will bring that to admin services and, of course, the whole board ultimately for that conversation and decision. So we'll bring forward a recommendation. What other questions might you have or information you might need? Okay.
All right. Thanks, Penny. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Support.
Motion by Craig, support by Horowitz. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.